We didn't know each other, so we weren't really sure who we were picking. We picked one of the objects, and then we would close our eyes and see what came to us about the person. And they were all really accurate. And I just is like, I didn't know that I had any psychic ability, but it just really developed from there. So it was very, very enlightening.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. This is the Limitless Living Show with Chuck Anderson, and we have another amazing guest here for you today. This is the show where we talk about stories of personal transformation and overcoming limitations, designed to inspire you to overcome your limitations and write your own story of personal transformation so you can live happier, more fulfilling, and joyous life now. And I am just, blessed with amazing people in my life who are not only people who have, they're on their own journey. I mean, we're all on a journey, but, have lived, various stories of transformation in their life. And one of the things that inevitably happens with these types of people is that they end up in the type of work where they are helping others with their stories of transformation as well. And today's guest is no exception to that. Lesley Corte, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chuck. I'm really glad to be here. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, like I said, today is it's about stories of personal transformation. And you and I have talked before. I've heard your story. I think it's quite amazing. So, but our listeners haven't heard it. So, Lesley, I got to start very simply with, what's your story?
I have many stories. I use stories to show people a transformation through my own experiences. Okay, so I think I started doing a Instagram page a while ago, and the things that really struck people were all about soulmates. And so I realized that everybody wants connection. And so I went back to the first time I did a past life regression with a friend of mine. And I was sitting and I decided to do this with the new guy that was in my life. And when we came back out of it, we found out that we were in the same place. And we were looking at each other, but he was way down below me and I was way up on a hill, and I was like an Egyptian princess and he was a laborer or working in the down below me. And we were both very surprised, and he said he was looking at me like he knew he could not be with me, and he was, didn't like that idea, but anyway, unrequited love was what it was. And so I just really felt like we had, here we go, a real connection with each other. And so we got together. I really wanted to be with him. So this was a confirmation, but I lived with him for 6 years before I got married. And I was really hesitant to get married, which was, I don't know why, I just was. Well, maybe I really had a fear of being controlled. So like, I liked my freedom, and I liked to be able to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, because I was brought up in a family where I was really, really, it was quite rigid in terms of what I was supposed to do when. And anyway, I had joined a psychic development group, and very early on, we did a meditation, and let me think what that one was about. It was just a deep meditation. We started off with being guided into what I guess you would call the void, and let your mind go and see what comes. And I found myself in Persia in a little courtyard garden with a man. We were having an embrace. And I realized, but I knew that this was not my husband, my sheik. He wasn't a husband, he was a sheik, right? I was part of a harem. I've been part of harems a couple of times in my life. Anyway, that's an interesting awareness. I just realized that. And I realized afterwards that the guy I was with in that courtyard was my high school boyfriend. And I thought, oh my God, that's why I have not wanted to commit myself to my husband, Jim, because I still was holding on to that guy. He was like, at the time, I guess he still felt like the love of my life. But anyway, I got married, and Jim and I, so the transformation began with me finding out these past lives. And after that, I don't know if you want me to go on, but after that, another lifetime, which is a whole other story. We were taken in to discover our spirit guides. And I ended up lying on the ground, shrieking out, how could you do that to me? To a priest who was walking away, and I was a nun, and I had a baby with him, and all the other nuns were around, and they took this baby and took it away completely. And I was just like livid with this man, and like, how could he have betrayed me that way, and just left me behind, and just didn't really care about our love relationship. It was more about the strictures of the church that were important to him. And then after we came out of it, I felt like I was a little confused. Like, am I living in, this was in the 20th century. Am I living in the 20th century, or am I back there in France in the 1800s sometime? Like, I just felt like I had been there, and I had such an emotional and strong physical reaction to being there that it was kind of confusing. It took me a while to come back to the 20th century. And that was really the beginning, and he was my spirit guide. So after that, I began to have conversations with him all through my life. I've had conversations with that spirit guide, and I've met other spirit guides. And so they have opened up my mind to many deeper understandings about myself and about people. And really, if you can step aside from your ego, your rational mind, for part of the time, you will find so much about yourself that you couldn't imagine. And that's basically has kind of it really took off and transformed my life. And I really had more of an inner journey with my life, inner travels, rather than I have traveled in other places in the world. But recently I was thinking, I haven't gone to all these places that all these other people have gone to, but I realized they haven't done what I did. And I value that just as much as going to Paris or, whatever. Anyway, so how that transformed me. Well, I just learned I had talents that I didn't know I had. I was much more powerful than I knew I was. Very recently, actually, I was did a past life regression with a friend of mine. She did it for me. And I realized that I was a geisha. And I just, like, when I said, oh, I'm a geisha, because I had seen this before, but I never felt it. And I thought, oh my God, I love myself.
That's a great realization to have.
It was a great realization. It's like, oh my God, I loved my body. I loved what I did. I loved the artifice of the whole thing. It was just like, okay, I understand why I like art and clothing, and that. Anyway, it was kind of an interesting experience. So
you've learned a lot about yourself and your relationships through the exploration of past lives, what
Yes.
put you on that path? Like, so you're going along, you're living your life. Like, what was the realization, or what was that lead in to you even having a look there? Because most people don't.
No, I know. Well, I was in my 20s, and I had a friend who was very psychic, and she introduced me to some books, particularly Jane Roberts and The Nature of Personal Reality, which she channeled. Well, she channeled many books with her spirit guide, Seth. And so I think it was even 10 years after that I went into this psychic development class. But all along, from the time that I started reading her books, I began to realize that there's a whole lot more to us than our physical being and our rational mind. And I had always had a really a good intuition, because I became an artist, and you kind of have to step out of your questioning mind and just allow things to flow. So I was pretty interested by the time I took this class. And the first exercise we did, actually, the first class actually, was we did psychometry, where we all put an object in the middle of the room, and we picked one. We didn't know each other, so we weren't really sure who we were picking. We picked one of the objects, and then we would close our eyes and see what came to us about the person. And they were all really accurate. And I just is like, I didn't know that I had any psychic ability, but it just really developed from there. So it was very, very enlightening.
Amazing. And, so that was your first look at it. And then of course, you've had all this journey, and now you help people with taking them through past life regressions as well.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the types of people who come to you, and the types of situations they come to you with, where this is particularly helpful? I think you and I have talked before. We talk a lot about relationships and finding
Right.
soulmate and stuff. But is that a
Yeah.
lot of what you're hearing, or is there
Well,
more?
I think that I did have a client who wanted to find out why she was so interested in this guy that she met on the internet. And it was like an obsession of hers. So I actually did a couple of regressions with her, and she discovered that she'd had many lifetimes with this guy, but it didn't necessarily work out with him. It was but it was interesting for her, but it made her realize he was not the guy for her. I took somebody else on a journey, and basically she went into a forest and sat on a bench with a wise man, like what was I think he was in kind of Buddha type robes. And he was giving her a message, because she was very anxious about her life and decisions that she had to make. And he just calmed her down and said, it's all going to work out. You're on your path, etc. I find that people will discover, after you learn a few of your lifetimes, there seems to be a pattern. And I think for me, the biggest pattern that came out, and this was something that was my issue, was speaking out about my beliefs, and this practice that I did to my friends and family. And it took me many years when I decided, okay, I've got to do something about this. Where was I going with that? Because it became, I began to recognize that this was a pattern in the many lifetimes, that I had to run. I was a witch. I was not I had beliefs, and I was very outward with everything all until this lifetime. And I think that I needed to delve into these. And I was also an Austrian soldier in Nazi Germany. And I came back feeling like we cannot follow these mass beliefs anymore. We all have to find what's inside us and do what we need to do. And that is where I saw my life going, is that I just needed to speak out about what I believed. And it hasn't been easy. It took me a long time to.
Well, a lot of us are on that journey, and it can be hard to speak up in a lot of situations. And but it's fascinating to hear you tell these stories and like all these lives that you've explored. And I want to make sure that we, connect the dots between that and our listeners who are on their journey right now.
Okay.
And, at what point would you recommend to somebody that they do a past life regression and take a look at things, and what can they sort of expect in terms of what they can discover or learn about themselves or their relationships, just how it benefits them overall, really?
Well, certainly you would get an idea of why you're attracted to certain people, and perhaps they're not necessarily somebody you're meant to be with. And I realized that one of the people, my husband passed away 10 years ago, but after that I had a couple of relationships, which I didn't realize weren't going to continue forever. But I think, like, not everybody is meant to be together with the person they're with for their whole life. Like, you meet up with people for a particular reason, and they're there to bring out something in you, and you're there to bring out something in them. In terms of health issues, people can be born with, I haven't had a lot of people ask about health, but I know that they do. That used to be like you could go into no, that's not true. I won't say that. Let's see. And life purpose is very strong. A lot of people want to know what their life purpose is, and that will give them a bit more direction. Or, am I on the right track here? Those are two things. Relationships are really, really key, because if you can find the person that is helping you on your life path, then that's the soulmate that you want to be with. Somebody that's going, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to feel good. Sometimes you have some really big issues, they're trigger points, but they're there for a reason. Also, you'll find out who your family might have been in another lifetime and why you've come back together again. Because I've delved into that quite a bit too.
Well, because we don't choose our family, at least not consciously in this world. We chose them somewhere else.
Yeah, we chose them before we were born. It's on a spiritual level, and when you're in spirit or sleep, people could be sleeping, and you could be communicating with them and saying, okay, well, I'm going to be with you because you're going to challenge this part of me. You're going to shut me down, make me really fight hard to get my voice heard. Things like that. It's like, I realized after a while, the issues that I had growing up with my family were there for a reason, for me to fight for what I needed to learn and on my soul's path. And this time around, I had to come out and talk about the understanding that I had in other lifetimes, in a society where it's acceptable to be yourself. And actually, these days, it's not just acceptable, but people are really, really looking to express themselves more. rather than being stuck in their old patterns and old belief systems in the world. And wow, that's changing really rapidly right now. So.
Well, I know we could talk about this all day long, but to our listeners, if you're finding this as fascinating as I am, if you're watching this on video, look beneath this video. You're going to see links to connect with Lesley, and she does workshops and webinars periodically. So all the information is there. If you're listening to this on a podcast, just look in the player. All her links there are there as well. Briefly, what would be the best step for someone listening in to learn more about what you do? Would it be to connect and maybe have a chance to chat, or would it be your workshop?
Yeah.
Or what do you think is the best thing to do?
Yeah, you could email me. I guess you're going to be giving.
We'll put it down
Yeah,
there.
yeah, and put in the subject line, because I get a lot of emails with people I have absolutely no idea who they are. If you were just to say, I would want to chat, or let's connect. No, I mean, that sound like that could be kind of a lot of people. Not.
Well, you could even mention that you heard of Lesley on Chuck's podcast.
You could say, yes, heard about you on a podcast.
Yeah,
in the subject line, and let's chat or something like that. And that way I won't just delete.
There you go. And mention my name, because Lesley definitely knows who I am. And
Chuck,
we interact every week. There we go.
Okay.
Good. So great. We're going to put all of that info beneath the video and in the podcast so people can connect with you. Now, before I let you go, I have to ask you, because I ask this of all my guests, because so much of my journey has been about learning through books, the books that I read, and more recently with audiobooks. I find that I can consume them quite a lot faster through an audiobook. So, and I know you have a book of your own, but so I want to hear about that. But also, if you have a must-read book recommendation that you can recommend to others as well. So let us know those too.
Okay. Well, I did recently publish a book called Gems of Time. I'll show you. It's right here. Past Lives with Mystery, Romance, and Spirit Guides. And it has a lot of stories in it, and lessons that I learned from the stories that I tell. And some exercises too, help people tune into their spirit guides or tune into their own intuition. That's really, really key. And I also want to point out, which we never talked about, is meditation, because that's where your intuition gets activated. And if you're going to do anything, meditate to develop yourself. Meditation is the way to go. Anyway, the several books. I mentioned Jane Roberts' book, The Nature of Personal Reality, and then Seth Speed's, but she wrote many books, and I've read them all. I read a book called Initiation by Elizabeth H., which I don't know if it's even in print anymore, where she I think it was during the Second World War. She lived in Europe, and she discovered that she had a past life in Egypt. And I thought, oh my goodness, because that was one of my major lifetimes. So that was really powerful. Lately, I've been reading Dolores Cannon. She's a little bit out there, but not a lot of, I don't know how many people would want to start with her, but she writes several books.
So you work your way up to her.
I think so. Also Sonia Choquette, it's a biography. I like reading biographies of people that are psychic or do this any kind of spiritual work. I like to see how people get where they're going, and what they did, and what their childhood was like, and why they took this bend towards the spiritual world. So anyway, the Dolores Cannon, The Convoluted Universe, is pretty interesting. Well,
we'll link to as many of those as we can find, and And if we
Okay.
can't find them, I'll email you and find out. But when you're listening to this episode, just look beneath the video or in the podcast show notes, and all the links that Lesley and I decided to put there will be there.
Okay.
So,
Oh, I should also recommend Garnet Schulhauser, and he's written several books, and he very interesting. He was a lawyer. He actually wrote the part of something on the back cover of my book for me, because he's a regressionist, but he was a lawyer and, as straight as could be, and ran into a homeless man on the street. And that was a big transformation story, but he's written several books about the other side. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, check beneath the video for the links and in the podcast show notes for those links. And Lesley, thanks
Okay.
for those recommendations and really for sharing your story and your advice and just everything today. And again, if you have found this interesting and if you're going through your own journey, if you have questions about your relationships or your life, especially life purpose and all of that, reach out to Lesley, have the conversation, and she is someone who can help you to explore and find your answers. So thank you so much, Lesley, for being a guest on our show today. This has been amazing. And just before we sign off and we let everybody go, do you have any final words of wisdom or advice for our listeners before we sign off?
Trust yourself. That's really, trust yourself. Allow yourself to trust your intuition. When you get a feeling about something, trust it and go with it rather than questioning all the time. And the thing is, a lot of people think, oh, this is too woo-woo. What will my friends think? Exactly what I did. You don't have to tell them.
It can be your little secret.
It's a secret. It's a journey, and it's fun. It's like exploring life in a different way than we normally do, and it's very exciting, actually. So I recommend it.
Listen, trust the fact that you're even here listening to that, because that could very possibly be part of your journey as well. And I love that. And trusting myself was a big part of the beginning of my journey. And it's one that I get to be continually reminded of throughout. But I remember that being a really key theme. So I really appreciate those words. So Lesley, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. This has been incredible. To our listeners, thank you for being here as well. Go reach out to Lesley, learn as much as you can from her. She's got so much more that she can share that we can do in this tiny little podcast. And continue moving forward. Take one step towards the life that you want to live, and keep writing your story of personal transformation and overcoming limitations so that you can live a happier and more fulfilling life. And the sooner the better. Until next time, this has been the Limitless Living Show. I'm Chuck Anderson, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.